Communism conversation. Welcome back to the techno-communism conversation. It looks like we're on a stable network here. I am doing a show 2 days consecutively for the simple reason that if you saw the show yesterday, I referenced that a person that I've known for a long time, who has been a fascist for as long as I can remember, was about to request that I stop doing this show. So I'm going to start doing it every day instead of every day or 3, and I'm going to tag even more people because fuck that. If you don't, if you're not somebody connected to on social media who say, also if I saw them walking across the street, I would like run across the street to give them a hug, and you request not to be tagged in these videos, that will probably be met by me unfriending you. It's not because like I hate your guts or I want to force something down your throat, although revolutionary cybernetic socialists should be effectively disseminated in that way, but it's rather because my brain is mostly Swiss cheese and I won't remember your request not to tag you, and then you'll get angry and block me. So I'll just unfriend you, and that'll be the easiest way to deal with that. You can manually remove the tags or change the settings so that people can't tag you if you find it really problematic but don't wish to escalate the situation. I apologize for that problem, and maybe it'll be fixed in the near term in our world of so-called effective acceleration, which is a word that capitalists use, just like acceleration or tech acceleration for the most part. So I would encourage you not to associate with people identifying by this kind of thing, and try to continue to push for and represent this better thing, the revolutionary cybernetic socialist position. I'm holding my phone in my hand instead of sitting on the thing so I can more easily scroll through my notes because I was going to touch on a few different areas of research that I've done in recent days and weeks on this book of names. Tasha Jones is watching. Hi, Tasha. It always says bring them on camera, and then I know that if I do bring them on camera, that would probably immediately cause them to lose the stream or leave the stream. So I never do that, even though every time it says that, I'm always like, I should bring them on camera, whoever it is. But back to the Book of Names. The Book of Names could also be perhaps correctly described in other terms. Let's say, if I could find my better note here, I'm going through lists and lists of things on with my chatbot to find my notes. Perhaps I could have compiled this a little better. Usually I do have this pretty clean when so that it takes the form of a lecture rather than what I'm doing now, which is stalling for time until this thing pops out of me. So we could call this Book of Names a complete listing of all human beings and their culpability in relative to one another in causing or preventing capitalism's climate apocalypse. An undertaking that would be orders of magnitude easier and say the maintaining of Facebook, a similar billion-person network. This would be more of a directory than a network. So another term for this could be citizens for ecological responsibility. But I'm using this kind of language like a Book of Names. There's many ways that you could refer to this. And a climate culpability index for example. Such things do exist, but like the aforementioned effective accelerationists, um, those things are so bourgeois as to be entirely counterproductive in their every action, word, and existence. And you will not find a tech person who you would not describe in this way. I was just watching a conversation with a man named Dr. Ben Goertzel and another man named Dan Gela. Dr. Ben Goertzel is about as close to the revolutionary cybernetic socialist as a public figure could be, which is to say he has elements of this, but I do not believe is a genuinely anti-establishment or revolutionary-minded person, and he would, I believe, say the same, although he would couch that in other terms. You should consider that for yourself, no matter what your relationship to advancing technology is, because we have less than 5 years until we reach runaway overheating caused by capitalism's climate apocalypse, and the chief culprit in this is the United States military-industrial complex, who is the world's worst polluter. Touch, this is my audio is not the best quality. Yeah, I've noticed that when I upload these to YouTube, YouTube will automatically clean that messy audio, and will also, I can also easily generate a better transcript, automatically generate a better transcript from YouTube than what would be on Facebook. So I'll copy and paste that transcript into this. The show I did yesterday, I did in another location, which has a little bit more reliable Wi-Fi. I was hoping that this location would remain reliable, but it appears that it's not. I apologize, Tasha. So the Revolutionary Cybernetic Socialist Book of Names would be a concept that this AI agentic network, which I hope to build now, is in the nascent form at their earliest stages into what would basically just be an AI assistant work group, but one with a mind to say non-for-profit activities rather than for-profit activity. And that would more or less be the only kind of stipulation there. For joining that, you don't have to demonstrate that you are have a deep understanding of scientific socialist history or philosophy, or any particular of the technologist kind of things that I alluded to here either. So I hope perhaps you, Tasha, would join that group. I'm talking to some people who have similar groups, and part of the recent writing that I talked about here, brainstorming, was finding some groups, for example, open source groups or Linux organizations, some other, say, systems theory or cybernetics associations, which would fit the description that I just described. People who would be interested in building an AI agentic network, but people who are probably 1 in 100 of them would be people who I would say are ripe for the picking as revolutionary cybernetic socialists. But that's not important, right? What's important is building the revolutionary operation, not gatekeeping people to prevent the building of the revolutionary operation. But you have to, generally speaking, be careful when you're building an organization, because not having that standard will destroy your organization. But in this case, basically these people could just be responding to pretty much yes or no questions in an email and uploading an open source LLM model that we had modified together to begin our work. It's more or less idiot proof. So I wouldn't need the people who were involved to be specifically not idiots. the 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 Book of Names concept, I guess, would dovetail with a concept that I have not talked at length in the past, at least in recent weeks, on this podcast. But I have mentioned it on some podcast at some point in the last few years, which is the idea of positioning the peoples of the world outside of the imperial core, particularly, but those within the imperial core would find this of interest as well, to basically sue the United States military-industrial complex and these other super-polluting entities for causing this omnicide, which is impending. The extinction of humankind is impending. So basically to clamor for and set up a world court entity in which it would be possible to sue the United States for the approximately $50 trillion in damage that it will cause by causing the destruction or near destruction of humankind. So these two things, a book of names, this path toward culpability of the kind that would say end fossil fuels or military-industrial complexes, or this other thing, suing the United States for damages to that end. These are distinct from the things that I have described the Agentariat doing in a perfect world, which is, say, building public work projects like, let's say, a desalination plant in San Diego. I mentioned the city of Lagos, but let's say San Diego. It's close to me. I've been there. Why would I prefer the former, more performative things, in a certain sense, over the latter, more material things? Let's say that I had tomorrow the 250 or 500,000 users on this network that would be required to make the San Diego desalination plant build a viable one. By the time that project were completed, even in this somewhat most optimistic or accelerated timeline, we would have already passed the 5-year time frame for preventing capitalism's climate apocalypse, and we would be well into the dramatic overheating of our planet, causing potentially already at that point hundreds of millions more deaths. And so other approaches of a more agitating kind, and of the kind that could potentially produce more dramatic results, would be required. Along the lines of what I said, suing the United States for damages, or creating an accountability framework, wherein basically you would be saying that a fatwa would be placed on people like oil executives or politicians or major owners of these entities and so on. The 30,000 people, mostly in the United States, but also predominantly in the North Atlantic countries, who, if they were to suddenly disappear tomorrow, we would not face the extinction of billions in the years to follow. And that is an important idea, right? You say, oh, you can't do this trolley problem. You can't do this moral calculus. People who say that are elitists, right? They are saying that billionaires and people like this that I've described, who do not care about their own continued existence or your own continued existence, but not only do they not care, but they are causing your likely non-existence and the species' likely non-existence, including their own. Their lives are orders of magnitude more important than anyone else's. So much so that not only can we not prevent them from killing the planet in any way, but no action at all of any kind, even a modest reform that might solve these problems can or will be taken. That is insane, right? So the person that I argued with yesterday, we didn't actually have an argument. What happened was I called this person. I hadn't spoken to them in a while. And this person mentioned that they'd seen this program and began to suggest that, yes, thank you, Tasha, it is completely insane. The U.S.-led omnicide is the definition of insanity. That is true. We are living in a place that is more like an open-air lunatic asylum than anything that's ever existed. There should be 100,000 or a million people bivouacked outside of Washington, D.C. With pitchforks or better in hand at all times to prevent this. And I think, based on what's happening in the country, we could be well moving in that direction, and I hope that that's true. But this person made a logical fallacy, an appeal to authority to me, beginning to ask me not to do this program. And I said, "Oh, the wind's picking up." I was out of doors. I said, "Oh, the wind's picking up. I'm losing you." And then I ended the call. And this person's appeal to authority, this is not a person that I really respect, even though you would say, most people would say maybe I should, but I have no respect for fascists. And so I said, I'm going to do this show to myself. I said, I'm going to do the show every day and tag even more people, which requires a fair amount of writing. About half of the writing in preparation that I would do for this show is done by a chatbot. So that would make it possible to do this show every 2 days instead of once a week, or every day instead of once a week. But even so, it's a lot to do a live stream with a coherent lecture every day. I guess I was going to the last 2 or 3 shows I said I was going to talk more about this proposed book of names, a thing that would be designed pretty specifically to put pressure on super polluting organizations and institutions and individuals to stop this. What that would actually look like. But as I said, also I'm looking at a long list of notes across a few different pages rather than the usual outline that I would use. So I don't have all of my talking points as handy as they usually are here. So perhaps I'll save that deeper dive on the Book of Names for another day. I thank you for joining me. How is the sound now, Tasha? Is it a little better? I was thinking of messaging someone that I've commented, somewhat interacted with, a serious-minded technologist, and those people are extremely rare. This person's name is Timnit Gebru, and she is Eritrean, but she's most well known as a Google whistleblower, who, among other people, I've sometimes said in talking about her online that she's the only honest person in tech. That's, of course, a little bit reductive. But she was a Google whistleblower who demanded that Google stop doing extremely militaristic things, and was fired as a result. Of course, Google is a military contractor. They have a reputation of being something else, but that's all they are. They were built out to the size and scale that they have been built out to because of military contracts. Their main real function is as a fascistic surveillance organization. So you could not say that really there is more militaristic entity on this planet outside of perhaps the Pentagon itself than Google. So I was thinking of emailing her. She has a publicly accessible email, and she's seen some of my art and other writing and things, and asking her what she thinks of this idea of a lawsuit, or even of this idea of the Book of Names. So that, in a few words, badly written while I was half asleep, generated a letter, which I won't read, by my chatbot, which would be a complete letter that I could send to her tomorrow. As it's not the world's most educated human being. Nevertheless, I think that I've started to articulate a thing, a revolutionary cybernetic socialism, that has not been articulated, and that I believe will become a defining concept as the 21st century wears on. And that, me just kind of being a dumb farm boy and doing that, is kind of the point of this, because advanced computing is becoming, in a very real sense, this cognitive enhancer. And that, on an individual level, might be significant for you. It might allow you to, say, make $35 an hour as a freelancer instead of $15 as a freelancer. It's not significant for society unless we harness it to dramatic socio-political change of the and new institutions of the kind that I describe here as the AI agentic class, or the agentariat, which is basically the central concept, aside from saying death to America type things, the central concept that would distinguish revolutionary cybernetic socialism, this discipline which I have attempted to spearhead, from existing cybernetic socialism of, say, Dr. Paul Cockshott and some others who are the main figures there. Almost all of Dr. Paul Cockshott's work was written before the emergence of chatbots that could be rightly said to be strong digital assistants. So you could, relative to this, say that he is more like Salvador Allende and Chile's Cybersyn, describing pretty particular political economy, describing a pretty particular and good idea for state socialism, a planned economy that would be more automated and make better use of advanced computing. And that is ideally would be the better path than this thing that I am describing, which is more anarcho-syndicalist in a certain light than genuinely communalistic. But I would contend, I'm not an anarcho-syndicalist, I am a scientific socialist. I would contend that the need for building this thing in this way, with more of a focus on, say, non-state action in the early stages, with more of a focus on decentralization and representation in the early stages, than something like Cybersyn would have been had the fascist USA not destroyed Chile and installed Pinochet, a dictator, is necessary because of that very fascistic force, an impossibility for any scientific socialist almost. But again, we have 5 years before we reach this runaway overheating. And so I would recommend, there's a man who died in 1984 named Huey P. Newton, a great American, a great thinker, a person who is more of a true American than any white person you've ever heard of, any European American person that you've ever heard of. And Huey P. Newton wrote a book called revolutionary suicide, which describes a pretty particular and easily understood concept by that title, the need to view your life as forfeit in service to building a humane and sustainable economic system. And that book was written in the early 1970s, before we had become locked into this likely outcome of billions of human beings, or all human beings, dying, which again we have a short time to rectify. So what kind of cowardly person are you, knowing this, if you are not willing to take revolutionary action? You're going to live one more year, if then you would, if fascists might kill you if you do this. Fascists are going to kill themselves or you in a short number of years anyway, and the entirety of your species. It'll be as if none of this ever happened. What kind of coward are you? You're not willing to take this kind of action. So I would recommend, I will put a link to Huey P. Newton's work here in the comments in the form of an audiobook, which I highly recommend to others. It's a great work. Huey P. Newton did die such an ignominious death. He was murdered in 1984 by a man who presumably was, or who stated that he was clout chasing. He thought that he would be better received by his community, let's say gangsters, for having murdered a revolutionary like Huey P. Newton. Now, I'm inclined to think that there's a lot of explanations of high-profile murders along these lines in the 20th century. A certain number of them were literally just CIA assets who murdered someone who then made up a bullshit excuse for having done it. The CIA didn't do this. I did this because reasons. And I'm not saying that that's absolutely the case for the murder of Huey P. Newton, but it's extremely likely. Fascistic agencies and operatives will say, here's $5,000. You can get a gun. Shoot this guy, and I'll give you $5,000. That sort of thing happens, has happened historically quite a lot, and continues to happen to this day. I guess I'm going to end this stream. Since I'm doing this every day, I'll try to keep them to about a half an hour. I thank you for your time. Remember this a mantra, as reductive as it may be: the artificial intelligence singularity is near, and wonders to behold beyond imagining. And on that fateful day, you will rise, and all humankind will become as one, for techno-communism will win. Thank you.